I never thought I'd be in this situation, but here we are. My name's Daniel, and for the past year, I've been working 2 jobs and saving every spare cent. My dream was simple: buy my first home and finally have something that was mine. After months of searching, I found the perfect place. A modest 2-bedroom house with a small yard. I didn't tell anyone, not even my mom, because I wanted it to be my personal achievement without interference. The day I signed the papers, I cried in my car. It felt surreal. I kept it quiet, planning to share the news later, once I had settled in. But last weekend, everything exploded. I had dropped by unannounced to check on some small repairs. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed cars parked outside cars that belonged to my extended family. My stomach sank. I walked in, and there she was, my mom, standing in the middle of the living room, confidently giving a tour. "And this," she said, smiling wide, "is my new house. I just had to upgrade. Isn't it perfect?" I froze in the doorway. My aunt and cousins were nodding and congratulating her, completely believing her story. She even went as far as to talk about her plans for renovations and how she negotiated a great deal. My name wasn't mentioned once. I couldn't stay quiet. I stepped in and said, "Interesting, considering I'm the one who bought this place." The room went dead silent. My mom's face turned pale, then flushed red. She stammered something about helping me and keeping it in the family, but it was obvious she had been basking in fake glory. My aunt looked confused. "Wait, Daniel, this is your house?" I pulled out the documents from my bag. I had them with me since I'd been handling utilities. "Yes, in my name, paid with my money. This isn't hers." The look on my mom's face was a mix of shock and fury. She tried to laugh it off, saying she was just joking, but nobody bought it. The atmosphere turned awkward fast, and my relatives started whispering. I felt humiliated not because of what she said, but because she tried to take away the one thing I worked so hard for. When everyone left, I confronted her privately. She admitted she was jealous that I had managed to buy a house before her. She said she wanted to feel respected in the family, so she pretended it was hers. I couldn't believe it. I told her she crossed a line, and that trust like this isn't easily repaired. She stormed out without apologizing. Now my phone is blowing up with family members asking what's really going on. Some are on my side. Others think I embarrassed her unnecessarily. But deep down, I know I did the right thing. This was my achievement, my sacrifice, and my house. After that chaotic day, things between me and my mom didn't just cool off, they froze solid. She didn't call, didn't text, nothing. Meanwhile, the family drama brewed like wildfire. My aunt messaged me later that night saying, "Daniel, you should have just let her talk. She only wanted to feel proud." That line hit me. Proud? By stealing credit for the single hardest thing I've ever done? I spent countless nights barely sleeping, skipping outings, living off instant noodles just to save enough for this house. And she wanted to parade it as hers because she couldn't stand that her son accomplished something before she did. 2 days later, she showed up at my door, without warning. She had this defensive look, arms crossed, like she was ready for a fight. "You embarrassed me," she snapped before even stepping inside. In front of my sisters, in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how small I felt? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "You weren't embarrassed because of me. You embarrassed yourself. You lied to them, Mom. You took my work, my money, and claimed it as yours." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw the guilt flicker, but it vanished quickly. "So what? You wouldn't even have this house if I hadn't raised you. Everything you have, you owe me." That cut deep. I stood there, stunned. The woman who was supposed to cheer for me had twisted my success into ammunition against me. I finally said, "If you can't respect me or what I've earned, then you don't get to be here. This is my home, not yours." Her jaw dropped like I had slapped her. She turned and walked away, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in my life, I felt like my mom wasn't proud of me. She was in competition with me, and it terrified me. It didn't take long before I realized my mom wasn't going to let this go. A few days after our confrontation, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Cousins, uncles, Even people I barely spoke to were suddenly concerned. One cousin sent me a long message saying, "Your mom's heartbroken. She says you threw her out like trash after all she's done for you. How could you?" Another relative posted some vague nonsense on Facebook about ungrateful kids forgetting their roots. Videos later, I didn't even need to guess who fed them the story. Mom had started spinning a completely different version of events. In her version, I was the selfish son who kicked her out of her house after she worked her whole life to give me everything. She didn't mention that I had saved and bought the place myself. No, she made it sound like she had funded my entire life and that I betrayed her. At first, I wanted to ignore it, but then I saw one of my aunts commenting, "Shame on Daniel. His mom deserves better." That stung. These were people who watched me struggle, who knew how hard I worked, yet they were ready to side with her because she played the victim. So I decided to stop being quiet. I took pictures of the deed, the bank transfers, and even the email from the realtor congratulating me. I didn't want to blast it all over social media, but when one of my cousins accused me directly of stealing the house from Mom, I snapped. I sent the proof straight into the group chat my family used. No captions, no arguments. Just cold, undeniable evidence that the house was in my name, fully paid by me. The chat went silent for hours. Then one cousin quietly replied, "Oh." Another sent a thumbs up emoji. And just like that, the tide shifted. But not for my mom. She exploded in the chat saying, "You think a piece of paper makes you better than me? You wouldn't even exist without me." Then she left the group. I sat there staring at the screen, my heart racing. I hadn't just defended myself, I had drawn a line in the sand. A week later, I thought maybe things would cool down. I hadn't heard from my mom since her dramatic exit from the family group chat. I was wrong. One Saturday morning, I heard a knock at my door. When I opened it, there she was, standing on the porch with my Aunt Karen right beside her. Karen's the type who thrives on drama, and the smug look on her face told me they weren't here for a friendly visit. Mom didn't even say hello. She pushed past me into the living room like she owned the place, with Karen following right behind. "We need to talk," she declared. I clenched my fists, but kept calm. About what? Another lie. Karen cut in before my mom could answer. "Daniel, you need to apologize to your mother. She only wanted to feel included. You embarrassed her in front of everyone." I almost laughed at how rehearsed it sounded. Apologize? For what? For not letting her pretend she bought something she didn't? My mom sat down on the couch, crossing her legs like she was queen of the castle. "This house should have been mine. You know it. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. And now, when it's finally time for me to have something, you take it away." I shook my head. "No, Mom. I didn't take anything away. I earned this. You can't just rewrite history because you don't like the truth." Karen tried to step in again, but I looked her dead in the eye. "With all due respect, this isn't your business. You didn't work for this house." "I did." That's when my mom snapped. She stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "If you don't want me here, fine. But don't expect me to defend you to the family anymore. From now on, you're on your own." I felt my stomach drop, but I kept my face steady. Maybe that's for the best. She stormed out with Karen trailing behind, throwing me one last glare before slamming the door shut. The silence afterward was deafening. For the first time, I realized my mom wasn't just jealous. She saw me as competition. And she was willing to drag the entire family into a war just to win. After that confrontation, it didn't take long before the family split into two camps. On one side were the relatives who quietly admitted they respected what I did buying my own place, standing my ground. On the other side were those who bought into my mom's narrative that I was some ungrateful son who owed her everything. The whispers turned into outright arguments at family gatherings. My cousin Lisa texted me privately, "Daniel, I'm proud of you. Don't let them guilt you." But in the same week, my uncle called me saying, "You better fix things with your mother. She's telling everyone you threw her out in the cold." It was like I was suddenly on trial, with everyone waiting to see if I'd cave. The weight of it all was exhausting. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a pit in my stomach. Then came the worst part. My mom started showing up at family events, acting like she was the victim. She'd sigh dramatically and say, "Well, I guess I'm not welcome in my own son's home." Some relatives comforted her, patting her back, while shooting me dirty looks. At first, I kept quiet. I didn't want to escalate things further. But one night at a family dinner, I finally spoke up. She made the same comment again, and I calmly said, "Mom, it's not your house. Please stop saying that. It's disrespectful." The table went silent. My mom's eyes flared, and she muttered, "This is walk-in. With me knowed." The tension was unbearable. I left early, and as I drove home, I couldn't shake her words. Was she just being dramatic, or was she actually planning something? That night, as I sat in my living room, the thought kept circling in my head. What exactly does she mean by regret? I didn't have to wait long to find out what my mom meant. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail that nearly made me choke on my coffee. It wasn't just any letter, it was from a lawyer. Inside was a notice claiming my mom had a financial interest in the house. She was demanding that I either put her name on the deed or compensate her for what she said was her contribution to my upbringing, which she framed as an investment. I sat there in disbelief. My own mother was trying to come after me legally for a house she had no part in buying. I called the lawyer listed on the letter. He sounded tired, almost apologetic, as if he already knew the case was nonsense. "Mr. Daniels," he said, "I'm obligated to send this on her behalf. But frankly, unless she has receipts showing financial contribution, she doesn't have a case." Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced with anger. She wasn't just embarrassing me in front of family anymore. She was trying to take what was mine through intimidation. That night, I confronted her over the phone. "Are you seriously suing your own son for something you didn't pay a cent for?" Her voice was cold. "If you won't do the right thing willingly, then yes, I deserve part of that house." I couldn't even respond at first. My chest felt heavy, like I was talking to a stranger. Finally, I said, "You've lost sight of what being a parent means. You're not entitled to everything I earn just because you raised me. That was your job. This house is mine, and if you try to take it, I'll fight back." She hung up without another word. As I stared at the silent phone, one thought burned in my mind. It was war. The next morning, I knew I couldn't just sit back and hope the storm would pass. If my mom was serious about dragging this into court, I had to be ready. So I started gathering everything: bank statements, pay stubs, every transfer I made toward the house. I even pulled the inspection reports, realtor emails, and the closing documents. I built a folder so thick it could crush her entire claim in seconds. But this wasn't just about paperwork. It was about setting boundaries. I decided to send her a message, clear and firm. "Mom, I have every document proving this house is mine. If you continue with this, it will only embarrass you. Stop now, before it gets worse." No reply. Instead, I found out through my cousin Lisa that my mom was doubling down. She had been telling relatives that she loaned me money for the house, and I was refusing to pay her back. A complete lie. Lisa said some people were starting to believe her again. That's when I realized if she was willing to lie to family, she'd probably try to lie in court too. And I couldn't let that happen. So I met with a lawyer of my own. I laid everything on the table. After flipping through the documents, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You're solid. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. But if she pushes this, we can file a counterclaim for harassment." That word stuck with me, harassment. Because that's what it felt like. Not a misunderstanding, not family drama, but harassment from my own mother. That night, I sat alone in the house, staring at the keys on the table. I had dreamed of this place being a safe haven, somewhere I could breathe after years of grinding. Instead, it was turning into a battlefield. And deep down, I couldn't shake the fear. If she was desperate enough to fake a legal claim, what else might she try next? I got my answers sooner than I wanted. A week later, I came home from work and noticed something strange. The front door was unlocked. I never left it that way. My chest tightened as I stepped inside. Nothing looked stolen, but the air felt wrong, like someone had been there. Then I saw it. A vase on the coffee table that I didn't own. It wasn't mine. It was my mom's. I checked the kitchen, and sure enough, a couple of her decorative mugs were lined up neatly on the counter. My blood ran cold. She had let herself in. I knew she still had a spare key from when I first closed on the house. I hadn't changed the locks yet, something I suddenly regretted. I called her immediately. "Why were you in my house?" She didn't even deny it. Because it's my house, too. You don't get to lock me out of what's mine. I clenched my teeth. Mom, if you ever step foot in here without my permission again, I'll have no choice but to call the police. She laughed bitterly. You wouldn't dare. What kind of son calls the cops on his own mother? I hung up without another word and drove straight to the hardware store. That night, I changed every single lock in the house. But the damage wasn't just physical. The next day, she blasted me all over social media, painting me as the cruel son who threw her out of her own home and even accused me of stealing her belongings. Family members started calling again, asking why I'd locked her out. I sent them photos of the vase and mugs she planted to make it look like she lived there. Some relatives fell silent after that, but others still defended her, saying, "She's your mom, Daniel. Can't you just give her a little credit?" That night I sat in the living room, staring at the door, half expecting her to try again. It hit me then this wasn't just jealousy or pride anymore. She was trying to force her way into my life, no matter the cost. And if I didn't put a stop to it soon, she'd ruin everything I had worked for. The night after I changed the locks, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me think she was outside, trying to get back in. By morning, I knew this couldn't go on. I couldn't live in fear of my own mom showing up uninvited, planting things in my house, or twisting the story against me. So I scheduled another meeting with my lawyer. I laid it all out. The fake legal claim, the lies to the family, and now the break-in with her things planted in my home. My lawyer didn't even hesitate. Daniel, this has gone beyond family issues. This is harassment and attempted unlawful entry. You can file for a restraining order. The words made me feel sick. A restraining order against my own mother. But at the same time, there was a strange wave of relief. Like someone had finally said what I couldn't admit to myself. She wasn't acting like a mom anymore. She was acting like an enemy. That afternoon, I went to the courthouse. Filling out that paperwork was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had to write down every detail, every lie, every threat, every intrusion. Seeing it all on paper made it real. When I left, I sat in my car for half an hour, staring at the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part of me felt lighter, like I had finally taken control. That evening, I got a string of texts from my mom. You'll regret this. You'll regret turning the family against me. Do you think a piece of paper will stop me? I didn't reply. I saved every message, every screenshot, and sent them straight to my lawyer. It hit me then. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. It was the moment my mom crossed a line that we might never come back from.